America is starving for truth and for men who have the courage to speak it. In a world that calls sin love and cowardice compassion, one man is standing tall in the heart of New York City, Pastor David Englehardt. He's not just preaching the gospel, he's living it out loud. When the world shut down, David kept his church open, not in rebellion, but in obedience to God. That's real faith. That's courage. And it's the kind that Charlie Kirk believed in with every fiber of his being. Charlie used to say, America's problems are spiritual before they're political. He was right. What we're facing isn't a crisis of policy, it's a crisis of truth. And the solution begins not in Washington, but in the pulpit, in the home, and in the heart. And Pastor Engelhardt reminds us that strong men build strong families, and strong families build strong nations. His message to America is simple. Stop apologizing for believing in truth. Stop hiding your faith, and start living like you actually mean it. Pastor David Englehardt, welcome to the Terry Schilling Show.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we got a lot to unpack today, but I was intrigued by your book because when I was reading the summaries of it, which, by the way, I haven't bought it yet. I'm buying it as soon as the show is over. But the title called Hood Kills.
Yeah.
Unpack that for us and tell us about the premise of this book.
You know, I was teaching a theology night before I planted my church in 2018, this was like 2015, in Manhattan, and it was to a bunch of young people. They were, early 20s, and there was a couple hundred people there. It was a very popular church in Manhattan at the time. And I was talking about justice and right and wrong and those kind of concepts. And I said, and we know that good kills. And I was talking in reference to like heroes and dragons and evil and Christ and sin and all, these grand universal concepts. Then when I said it, the audience looked at me like I slapped them in the face, because to them, goodness was compassion, and Jesus is love and compassion and all of these soft virtues and none of the hard virtues. And it so shocked me that I started writing. That was back in 2015. I didn't finish it until later when I met Charlie. And really, the idea was like, what are the really hard, strong truths in the Bible that we don't get confronted with, that we need to be confronted with in general, and then in this moment. And one of them was just the hierarchy of sin. And so sin has a hierarchy of damage to the human being, to the civil society. People say all sin is the same. It's one of the greatest fallacies of the modern era. It's like,
can I sometimes see a little bit worse? Sounds like shooting your mom? Is that okay? No, I can, steal this penny. Obviously, it's like me. It's like saying all sickness is the same. A cold is the same as having brain cancer. It's like, no, categorically, sure, all sin is sin categorically, but it's not all the same. And churches have an obligation to talk about the really important fundamental things. And that's what one of the things Jesus was really frustrated with the Pharisees about. He was like, you'll strain a gnat, right? You'll strain a gnat out of a vole, but you won't lift the load of your neighbor or your parents. You won't do the weightier things of the law. You'll do the lesser things and focus all your time and spend all your energy on the lesser things. And so what are the weightier things? Like family, having children. Like, is that important for the propagation of a society? Maybe, potentially, It's like, how many churches in America right now that are Protestant harp on having large families? I'll tell you, in New York City, the answer is 0. Well, 1, ours. And so like we put in our church, and some of our values are just different than other churches. So this year, our church is a couple hundred people in Manhattan, but this year we had, I think we had 5 marriages, and all 5 of those people got pregnant in their first year. And I think 2 or 3 had like honeymoon pregnancies. And we celebrated so brightly that massive opposition to the death cult and the death culture. Yes. And so Good Kills is about fundamental things. It's kind of, Ryan Heffelbein is a friend of mine, probably a friend of yours. He runs Freedom Center. He always says it's like mere Christianity, but about issues of our time right now. Racism and family, it matters, and homosexuality, and which I called sexual anarchy. And he just total sexual. And then Charlie, he took that phrase and took it to the universe. And I remember one day it was trending on Twitter. Sexual anarchy was trending, and I was like, I created a phrase. That's great. And then everybody on the left was like, I love sexual anarchy.
Yeah, no, but okay. So let's unpack this a bit. You said a lot of things there that we can dive into. First of all, you're in the belly of the beast. you're in New York City, you're preaching the gospel to like the most unfriendly audience possible, I think. I mean, it's like Berkeley, New York City.
Yeah.
Those are on the same tier.
Yeah.
And you're getting people to get married. And then what are the ages of some of these? You said there were 5 marriages. Are they younger or the
These are all people in their late 20s, mid to late 20s, maybe a couple of early 30s in there. But yeah, these are young professionals.
How are like what's moving with them? Is your experience that all these young people really are trying to find a spouse, a partner, spend the rest of their life with, or are they afraid of it? Like, what are the hurdles that you're seeing in terms of family formation? Because I do think that getting people married younger and having babies younger and having more babies, I think that's the existential crisis of America right now.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on about this topic, but there's a joke that these 2 fish are waiting for the school bus, and this old fish swims by, and he says, "How's the water, boys?" And the one little fish turns to the other little fish and says, "What the hell is water?" And I just think that's such an incredible joke because, like, people don't understand what they swim in. They don't understand the ideas that form them. They don't understand the impulses inside of them and the decisions they're doing because of those secular impulses that were placed inside of them, because they haven't been formed by a Christian worldview. They've been informed by secularism. Okay, so they went to church a half hour a week. They've been formed by a secular mindset. And so the impulses inside of them are fear-based, they're scarcity-based. And so they don't want to have kids until they're in their early 40s because they're afraid of not having enough, not having fun, not having enough cocktails on rooftops, not whatever, all of the fun and stuff that I'm not going to have. I mean, and the reality is, like, if I ask any parent in the world, unless they're malevolent, what's the greatest thing in your whole life? You say, my children are the greatest thing. That's not even a question. Is it my car or my children? It's not even a question. That is my car. It wouldn't even be on the table. So the most beautiful, most profound thing that I had in my life, we tell people to wait as long as possible. But what we both know, Psalm says, blessed is the man whose quiver is full when he is young.
Like arrows in the hands of a mighty warrior.
Exactly. And so the when he is young part, I hardbond. I preach a message that is not seeker-friendly. It is the opposite, and it is problematic because it's hard to build a church in New York. And if you avoid all those hard things, you'll have a bigger church, and you'll have more money, and life will be easier for you. I was golfing with these guys one day, and they're like, "Oh, you should talk about that Charlie Kirk kind of stuff because it's like an advertising gimmick." I'm like, "Not in Manhattan, it's not. It's an anti."
There's a lot of these truisms out there, right? That the people think are real and true, but actually it's the total opposite.
That's exactly right. So when you ask me, like, how do we get people to have kids young? My answer to that is they have to have a profound and authentic encounter with God. Because there's like a movement of like, there's an identitarian movement. It's like, I want to be a Catholic or I want to be an Orthodox and God bless everybody on the Jesus team. Or I'm going to just start going to church. It's like, because of Charlie. Fantastic, right? But it's like, no, you have to have an encounter where you submit your life to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And if you do that, you realize that he says, like when he's talking to the Pharisees, do you not know that it is written? His vision of God's word is himself manifest in the word. That's a different conversation. Is super high, and so if you take those words and you apply them to yourself, you have to get married and you have to have kids. Either that, or you give your whole life to be a missionary. Those are the only 2 options. There's no option where you can just hang out and have cocktails until you die. And I know a lot of people struggle trying to find a spouse. I get it. It's a struggle. It's hard to do because people are crazy right now. But, have faith, get on Christian mingle.
Well, there is this, I think it's idiotic, I think it's anti-Christian concept of fatalistic dating or fatalistic marriages where like there is the one that exists for you. I know people that have gotten divorced because they realized that they weren't married to the one.
Yeah.
But what I've come to learn just through my own parents' experience through their struggles with addiction is there is the one. There's just the one you choose to love.
Exactly.
Right? Like once you go through those marriage vows and it's, till death do you part, that is now your one.
That's right, Terry.
And I wonder how that, I think it's like the Disneyfication of America.
Totally. I mean, it's more than that. I mean, it's the stories we've been telling each other from Psyche, the Greek stories. But I wasn't the one for my wife yesterday. I was a jerk yesterday. Yeah, I'm on the carnivore diet, and I'm like, I'm sad and I'm depressed, and I'm not talking to her, and I'm like, and I going into my prayer, and I just feel like the Lord's like, you're being a jerk. Go be nicer to your wife. Go ask her questions. If you don't want to talk, you don't have to talk. At least ask her questions. Running trip here in D.C. from where, you can be the one tomorrow. You can be the one by changing yourself. I hate that old thing that's like, oh, he's different than the person I married. Like, yeah, of course they're different. You teach how your life was ever right. It is partially that Disney thing. It's fatalistic, but it's also a product of secular materialism, which is I'm bound to these acts that are moving through the universe. I'm bound, and I hope I found the person I'm supposed to be bound to. And it's sad because I always say this to guys that are young and struggling with that exact issue. I say, if you lived 600 years ago in a town and there was 2 chicks in the town, and one of them was old and toothless and single, and the other was not old and toothless and single, that's it. That's the only decision you're making. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to be very happy and propagate the species. And
It was such a different world. And here's the other thing I'll say is that during that time, marriage was not just about you individually. It was more about the future and your society and what was going to happen. And actually being loyal to God and right? Like there was a God element, there was a community element thing. It wasn't just, what do I want right now? Which I'm not saying you should never care about what you want. Although you should be last, right, in terms of everything else in the world. That's like called being a good person, is when you're putting other people ahead of yourself.
Totally. Yeah, and then that's part of the idea in the book that's kind of central to it, is that death to self is where we get life. And that's Christ's whole message, not just declared but actually lived, right? That death in self is life to the world. And so I share this illustration that the cross can actually be seen as a sword being plunged into the earth. And if you remember in the Garden of Eden, when men and women were kicked out of it, there was an angel with a sword guarding for them not to come back in. And, my picture is that sword is an implement picture of death, that you do enter back into the garden, back into relationship with God, back into your purpose, back into your destiny, once you go through with death to self and then living for Christ. And I think that's like back to, how do you get people to have more babies? How do you get people to like jump on this idea? It's like, it's death to self. It's not about you. My kids are phenomenal. I have a 16, 14, and a 9, and we tried to have 1 million kids. We're still trying to have 1 million kids, and we're hoping to have more kids. It's not always easy, obviously, to be a parent, but it's the most fulfilling, wonderful thing there is in life. 100%. I remember when my son was born, I was driving home, and my wife was at the hospital. We'd been like 30 hours of labor, so I went home to take a nap. But I'm driving home, and I remember just this overwhelming feeling like, this is what you were born for. This is your purpose in life. Mm-hmm. And for every father, that is a primary purpose of your life, is to father. And that's what Malachi chapter 4 says. This is how you save a nation. The hearts of the father turn to the sons, and then the sons turn to the fathers. Then I will lift the curse off of the land. And we don't see that. We see fathers building kingdoms for themselves, and careers for themselves, and castles for themselves in the church world everywhere. Mm-hmm. The pastor's 75 years old, and like there's no young people. Like that's my little corner of the universe seeing that. But it happens over and over and over again, that kingdoms are built for the men and not for the sons. And I would love for my sons to work with me, and I would love to plat for them, and I would love for them to be greater than me. It would be the dream of my heart that they would be greater than me. And I think they will be in their own different ways, but I will be a success on the earth if my sons are greater than me.
That's so funny you say that. I lost my dad 4 years ago, and I forget who it was, but it was like my algorithms changed online, and I got these videos, and I think it's Steve Harvey or one of these funny guys online. He was giving a serious talk, and he said, every man realizes once their father dies that they just lost the only guy in the world that wants them to beat them.
right? Like that your dad really is the only guy in the entire world, if he's a good man, who wants you to be better than him. Because ultimately that's the legacy, right? And I do think that with the boomers, especially, you're seeing this like jealousy or like some weird competitive spirit where they don't want their kids to do better than them. Actually, there's a bunch of polling now that shows that the boomers aren't going to leave. They're deliberately not leaving their children anything when they pass away, which means that, well, yeah, I mean, this generation had so easy. Like they could get a job that, you know, paid for a vacation home on top of everything else right out of high school.
Yep.
There's some weird spirit to that, though.
Yeah, I mean that's fundamentally that's just the secular mind. The secular mind is to consume all, right? That's the Ouroboros is the snake that consumes its tail, right? That's that ancient evil picture. The picture, a symbol of evil, is the snake eats itself, and that's what the secular mind does. If it's the opposite of life-giving and sacrificial, it's all-consuming.
This is my body. You'll be given up for me.
Exactly. This is my inheritance. I'm gonna eat it. I'm gonna get an RV and travel the country and spend my money at casinos, you know, all over the place. And it's like that's just purely secular. The Proverbs, as you well know, says a righteous man lays up an inheritance for his children's children. So he doesn't spend money on himself in his mind, saying, "I know I'm going to save this, you know, $200 dinner, and I'm going to put it somewhere so my children and my children's children have this." And it's hard to do. It has to be taught, you know, and it hasn't been taught. We've forgotten those ancient boundary lines.
Okay, so I'm the eldest of 10 kids. I've got 7 kids myself, and growing up, I always heard the joke. Depending on how many siblings I had, and even when we were at 5, it was, well, you Catholic or Mormon? But what I'm getting to is more recently, I've been saying that joke to people who have 6, 7, 8 kids, and the joke is now, actually, I'm Baptist.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I'm not God great. Is there some type of revival going on that you're picking up on in the non-Catholic, non-Mormon community?
Yeah, I mean, I think the better way to look at it is just to look at population rates in the early 1900s and throughout the 1800s. Like we had a lot of kids, and there's this really dumb secular line. It's like, well, you had kids because you had to, and you needed more workers on your farms. It's like, okay, sure, fine. I mean,
Italy typing sex, by the way.
Reagan's about to
89 birth control.
Well, no, I mean, that's an important part. I just want to mention that because, like, this is the apex human experience. The apex human experience is 2 human beings joining together in this intimacy, and it creates an eternal being, creates life. It's like God he wants more life, and so he makes the creation of that life, the act of that creation of that life, one of the, if not the, apex carnal experiences, because he likes life. It says in Malachi, "Did not I put my spirit into your union?" And then it says, the Malachi prophet says, "And what was the one God seeking but godly offspring?" So God's spirit comes into the union. He makes the act of procreation phenomenal, and it shows how much God likes life and the creation of life and the production of life. And so that's why, you know, the barrier, and this is the Catholic foundation in Augustine, of anything that's not procreative sexual acts, either they think is unnatural. It's an unnatural sexual act and it's evil. Anything outside of procreative act. Because why? God loves life and we want to protect life. And so then if you just look at stats of people being born, families have been having lots of kids for the history of the world. And then we had, you know, at these different moments, let's call them apex moments of prosperity in cultures, whether it's Rome or Greece or the United States. In Rome, they had like 30 to 40 abortifacients that you could take, consume to kill your baby. You know, in ancient Israel and Syria, they would just throw the babies in the fire. My father-in-law says a culture that worships sex has to destroy the babies. They have to, because they love the act and they don't love the production of the act, which is a life. And so I think what we saw contraception come in. We didn't really know what to do with it as a culture. We didn't have good teaching on it. Protestantism, for all its good, is
fractured in its theological foundation for these major issues. They don't know what to believe. But Vatican II came out. Catholics said, no, this is bad. We're having kids. And then I think we from the Baptists and the conservatives realized in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like these guys had these foundational ideas because they read the Bible and they're Bible guys. And so we've seen a resurgence of that. But the resurgence that's happening is it's so countercultural to leftism, which is killing kids and chopping up their body parts. It's such a contrast right now. I don't think there's more families that are doing it than that were. I just think the contrast is way greater. And I'm hoping that the church at large, the evangelical megachurch, these guys never talk about these issues. I hope basically to pick up some of these issues and realize the value of life.
Well, I think it's so important, and I think that ultimately what we're doing is we're playing God, right? And we're really bad at that. Humans have shown that we're really bad at playing God. And look, I got 7 kids, and I'm the eldest of 10, and I will get this, like, I'll tell self-deprecating jokes just to help, alleviate the stress that comes with that. It's all joy. It's a sacrifice of love. But, I think a lot of people don't realize that, one, the grass is always greener on the other side. There's some people that are trying and struggling, and they kind of get turned off by my jokes about having a big family. But the reality is that you just got to let God plan it. And that's what we've done, my wife and I. It's led to an increase in our faith and makes us depend on him more.
Yeah.
But I feel bad for these people that have tried to play God, right? And they got it wrong. And then when they actually try to go and have children, well, now it's not in God's will for you to have kids. Like the key is just to be open to whatever like God sends your way and be happy with that. Right?
I mean, that's exactly right. My mother-in-law always says, children are the only blessing, like, God, please bless me. They're the only blessing of God that people positively reject. Like, God, give me all your blessings. Are you sure you want my blessings? Because my blessings have to be managed. If you don't manage my blessings, it's wasted, and I'm going to give it to somebody else that it's willing to manage. There's a fiduciary duty that's involved there. And so I think she's right that people positively reject the blessing of God in this area. And blessings you have to work blessings. Doesn't just mean lottery tickets, right? God doesn't give out lottery tickets. He gives seed. And seed has to be planted and cultivated and grown. One of the coolest pictures, again, in my book on kills is this picture of in the Garden of Eden, we reach and grab this fruit, and it's the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and we consume it, and we become the arbiters of good and evil on these big moral decisions, like should I have kids or not, rather than just listening to God. But the most essential picture inside of that is we're not supposed to be the arbiters of good and evil. God is supposed to be the arbiter of good and evil. We don't have the capacity to rightly judge good and evil. We have to allow God to be the judge of good and evil, not us. And so when we take that fruit of the knowledge of good and evil and we consume it to know what is good and evil, it doesn't work. It breaks the universe. When we become the arbiters of good and evil, when we become the people that say, I know God says, but I'm going to do it my own way. It doesn't really make sense to me. It breaks the world, and it continues to do that.
The reality is, like, atheism is actually like an actual religion. It has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with us being our own God. And you see that play out with the fruits of atheists and human secularism. It's a product of that. I want to get you back on. We're running short on time. Where can people find you and follow you? And most importantly, where can people buy your book? Because I need that information so I can buy it after the show.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon Good Kills. It's on those standard kind of websites. And then where can people find me? King's Church, New York City. We have a podcast. We do all that stuff all over the place. I have Instagram, Engelhardt Official. It's a really bad name for marketing myself. It's not an easy name. I guess if you search Charlie Kirk, David Englehardt, I'll pop up there. We didn't even talk about Charlie on this show. That's okay. We're gonna.
Well, no. We had a little bit. What would you like I saw your Fox and Friends interview where you said now the mission is to get 100,000 to 1 million Charlie Kirks.
Yeah.
What's your takeaway? I mean, it's been a month it's his birthday.
Yeah.
He's getting honored with the Medal of Freedom Award by President Trump
Today, yeah.
What's your big takeaway lesson from Charlie?
I mean, just to be thematic, the Charlie revolution that's so incredibly fundamental is like you know, love God, get married, have more kids than you can afford. You know, like that's the most revolutionary message that he said on college. So it just is what it is. Like you can go through all the other tax and gender and all that kind of stuff, but it's like as basic as this. It's a repentance message. It's John the Baptist message. It's turn away from the way you were doing. It's like, how do you do that? Okay, like love God, get married, have more kids than you can afford. That's that. If people would believe that and start with that first step, which would be seek God, you know, and that's what happened to Charlie in 2020. Because Charlie, you know, had a relationship with God, but really 1920 is when he really turned on the God of hers, and was surrounded by a bunch of pastors, me and a bunch of my friends, and Rob McCoy, etc. And then, you know, and then he was running harder than us, and he's saying bolder things than we were. And I'm, jeez, I got
Tough. No, my spine was definitely precocious. He was a precocious young man, very, very bright, and he was going to be president. I'll never stop saying it.
I know. I was so excited to be the president's friend. I was like, we finally got our God. No, exactly.
Well, Pastor David Englehardt, thank you so much for joining the Terry Schilling Show, and we hope to have you back on very soon.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. Thank you.